there are, well, many other things going on around them. Of course, we have the series of bilateral deals inked between state governors in Mexico along the border. Those 4 states right simultaneous with Texas there, but also looking at a whole lot more of then the, well, inspection, turning to whatever normal can look like anyway in this day and age here. So we should be up over on the social media now. So if you're joining us over there, you're more than welcome to do so. It's one of the better ways to also leave your comments throughout the program. Again, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, those pages either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk in due order, and all of those because, well, the reason is, and the reason we do this, is to be out there in all the ways we need to be in this modern world in order to continue having the conversation about the things that affect us here in the borderland. So again, border security obviously been one heck of a topic of the moment here. So as the dust starts to settle on those deals having been inked between Governor Greg Abbott and the various governors of the states in Mexico, Chihuahua, of course, mostly affecting our region, but Nuevo Leon, Tamaulipas, Coahuila, and others, very much important in this. And so we're moving now to the, well, standard random inspections, I think is the right way to say it, the way it had been done previously on part of the, well, DPS troopers part specifically, and what that'll actually mean going forward. A lot of analysis coming in on that, and well, many other subjects related to it, even as we have, well, another example of, oh man, if I had an ability to just start policy, state policy, and make it happen and really just enforce the heck out of it, regardless of, well, let's just call it politics or even borders in this case. I mean, the smugglers and the abandonment now being reported over the weekend here of a 3-year-old in Santa Teresa, just the worst of the worst that come out about this, just left in the middle of the night here. So some more reporting coming on that, of course, from our news partners, among other here. But even then, in the midst of all of this talk here, looking at some of those foreign trade zones in the area being reported on by some of our other people that we talk with about the reporting over here, including El Paso Inc., but just a whole lot more, including some interesting statewide analysis about, well, of course, the politics and the campaigns in the background coming out about a lot of these different movements and machinations. And of course, well, the interesting line coming out by, well, former El Paso congressman and otherwise gubernatorial candidate from the Democrat side of things, Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, about, well, the lines he was taking this last week, both needing to not be that close to the Biden administration while at the same time still smacking back at the Abbott campaign. Weird line to cover here. So how's that been working out for him? Again, some interesting statewide analysis here, even as there are more movements, more efforts, and more things along all these lines here. So again, if you're tuned with us over on the social media pages, you can leave your comments there throughout the program here. We'll open up the phone lines a little bit later in the program as we do. So let's get straight to one of the things going on actually as of right now going on since a little bit earlier today, but still ongoing right now. It looks like there was a bank robbery happening in downtown El Paso today. So this kind of plays in a little bit more to the whole, well, not exactly lawlessness, but just increasing notable events of, well, a very disruptive crime, I guess would be a better way to put it here. So yeah, FBI, SWAT, El Paso Police Department apparently focusing on a, well, bank robbery that happened at the Wells Fargo at 221 North Kansas Street. I've heard from a couple of people that work down in the area or even at that location saying that thankfully they were safe. At least one person I know wasn't actually there today, thankfully to them. But I mean, that just kind of playing into a larger conception that I've been more than a little bit worried about. We've talked about this a few times on air, but the increasing, again, I hesitate to say lawlessness, but again, major incidents of crime that become incredibly disruptive because, I mean, among other things, beyond whatever actually went down in the midst of this particular crime, this alleged bank robbery downtown, I mean, there have been to shut down major streets. I mean, even drones being used in the area, according to our news partners over at KFOX 14. So a lot of disruption beyond just the actual, implementation of whatever the heck happened in the progress of this crime. So that's going to have something we'll be checking back on. But again, the larger issue of there being more like that going on, I guess would be the way to say it, because it's concerning. We've had more than a few incidents of people doing, well, otherwise not necessarily majorly disruptive, but then when it comes down to then schools being locked down, roadways shut down, manhunts happening, stuff like that, it does seem like, well, this is one of the major incidents we've seen this year so far. But, I mean, we've seen stats that have been coming out across the country about increases ever since essentially lockdowns have been getting lifted from the COVID-19 restrictions, that people have essentially this pent up, I don't know if the purge analogy really is relevant to this, but it comes to mind the idea that there's all this pent up, well, criminality, let's call it for now, for lack of a better term, that has just not been getting, acted on. And so because people weren't there, you can't exactly rob a business or, get someone else, whatever the situation is, if they're not there and they're stuck at home and you can't get the stuff you need from them. So while Flaco Jimenez, with the change of pace, they're saying, hey, hope everyone had a nice Easter. I certainly hope you did as well, because we got some serious stuff to deal with here as well. Also dropping that like over there. Do appreciate it. But again, to the criminal nature of what seems to be going on, I mean, this is a pretty brazen thing. I've been doing a little bit of study of, historical aspects, as I am known to do, but particularly of the, Prohibition era and, Depression era gangsters that were going around. And while there's not a whole lot of details coming out just exactly yet about what happened in the commission of this downtown bank robbery, it does feel like there's a whole lot of comparisons being made to the 1920s and 1930s lately, both in terms of laws in place, in terms of social conditions, in terms of political conditions, and, world events. Shall we call that a confluence of all of those? So I got to wonder if this is going to play further, I hope this is going to be a one-off. There is no doubt in my mind that do not want more of this to be happening, but given what we've been talking about with the rates, the increasing criminal activities that have been happening nationwide, and that we've noticed, again, those few very bright line items happening in our own community, it does seem, whether or not this is an abject, absolute increase in criminal activity, we've already hit, I know for last year, some highs in terms of murders that we are not usually tagged with here in this community here. And, RJ, putting it further in focus here, let's hope that recession doesn't take place and lead to food shortages, or it's really going to be fun. Fun in heavy quotation marks in my mind here anyway. I think I'm taking it the way you're intending it there, because, you really want to talk about 1920s conditions and, the issues that came along with all of that. Certainly, something I'm not interested in repeating here. So let's just hope this is a one-off, but still something that, again, putting this actually into context in terms of all the rest of it, I mean, I don't know how many bank robberies actually happen in town that often, to be perfectly honest. I know that, ripping off of gas stations has been a problem enough that it's warranted its own city ordinance and requirements for extra both security and surveillance when it comes to individual, corner stores, essentially. But beyond that, if this is going to be a trend, that's something we need to be talking about maybe a little bit more, but that's going to take us through the first break of this hour here already. Coming out of this break, we'll talk more about particularly some of those border conditions, among other things, because, we've had a lot of activity happening with that over the past couple of weeks, so we'll get into that and a whole lot more, so stay tuned for more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew J. Polk. Comments coming in over on the social media. Welcome to chime in over there. Again, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And back after this break with more. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the 54 Patriot northbound at Fred Wilson exit, an injury accident there. Expect delays. I-10 westbound at Mesa, that's exit 11. Police on the scene of a crash there. Gateway Boulevard eastbound at Loma Land, an injury accident. Loop 375 eastbound at Padres, right lane is blocked because of road debris. And Montwood Drive westbound at Saw Kleinfeld, an injury accident there. Take Lee as an alternate. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Are you a safe driver? Are you looking to save money? With DriveWise from Allstate, the safer you drive, the more you can save. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
This is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Thank you, El Paso and surrounding areas, for helping us be El Paso's #1 dealer in new Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram sales in March. As a gesture of our gratitude, we've extended all our Ram Truck Month deals, like 0 down, 0% interest for 72 months and no payments for 90 days.
Buy now and save thousands on a huge inventory of new and certified pre-owned vehicles. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. All new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer full-size SUV with third row seating. 0 APR for 72 months. 0 payments for 90 days. We've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms, even if your credit is less than perfect. And we want your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Solent Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun. At I-10 and Solent Park Drive or online at solentparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APRs, $13.89 per thousand finance. All select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Help DEA keep our community safe and healthy by participating in National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, Saturday, April 30th. Take action right in your own home by cleaning out your family medicine cabinet of unneeded medications. Keep them safe, clean them out, take them back. To find a collection site near you, visit DEATakeback.com. Do your part to lower overdose deaths and prevent prescription drug misuse before it starts. Visit DEATakeback.com. That's DEATakeback.com.
Hand me that nail gun. Here you go. And here's the fries. Lunch. Who's hungry? You know, maybe instead of loading up a nail gun with French fries to feed the crew, we should just order lunch through Easy Cater. Food from all our favorite restaurants. My bad. On time and as ordered. Delicious. Huh. Load up the hot dogs while I think about it.
Some food just doesn't work at work, but Easy Cater just does. Food for work on time and as ordered from over 85,000 restaurants. Order 24/7 at easycater.com.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Even as events in the world and, of course, in our region continue to evolve and change, and even as, well, my personal travel plans are still kind of up in the air, wondering if I'll be even a good idea to leave the country at any point within the next, year or so. But aside from all of that, I know without a doubt that I'll be able to get a good bit of the flavors from around the world, the stuff that I'd want to be visiting otherwise, because Enhanced Flavors is your local source of over 40 quality flavored olive oils, extra virgin olive oils, and balsamic vinegars. They, of course, have their olive oils imported from some of the best places in the world for it: Tunisia, Italy, Greece, and Spain, and all of their balsamic vinegars imported straight from the Modena province of Italy. Otherwise, it's not balsamic vinegar. They got some great varieties, including some that'll really help spice up your life. Some of their garlic flavored ones that I think, if you're already looking to get that extra little kick out of your food, this will really help you out and really bring that flavor home for you and your family. You can find them oftentimes out in the community, particularly out at the Upper Valley Farmers Market on Sundays. That Hobby Lobby parking lot there at Donovan and Mesa is the place to find them, and you can try samples of a lot of their varieties. But for the full selection, you definitely want to find them online at enhancedflavors.com. That's enhancedflavors with a D.com.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways for you to interact with the program here, as we often do, because, well, among other things, we got a lot to talk about here. So comments coming in over on the social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk on most of those. And you can find, well, a lot of the stuff coming on here and a lot of the conversations coming up here. The Skeptic Squad alive and well and kicking over primarily on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk El Paso. To leave your commentary, chime in through there and wade into the Thunderdome of comments that often happens here. Flaco Jimenez, RJ, Louis Pinato, John Browselton, and more tuning in and chiming in over there. Also do appreciate that like drop by Flaco over on the Facebook page. It just helps with the algorithmic stuff here. We're doing decently well so far, even though it sometimes seems like the kibosh gets put on the reach here. But that's why we're on all these platforms, among other things. And, of course, we'll be on air. This is not to say that we have forgotten or do not appreciate the on-air portion of our audience. Y'all are kind of foundational to all of this, and that's why we definitely take phone calls and do the things that we do, which we'll be doing a little bit later here in the program. But some interesting comments being brought up here. John Browselton saying that, well, since the Biden administration refuses to negotiate with Mexico, Abbott had to negotiate with each Mexican state. Abbott might as well be president and conduct U.S. foreign policy. Louis Pinato adding on to that, saying kudos to Abbott for playing poker with Mexico and doing a re-raise. I mean, it's an interesting perspective here. And, of course, the politics are pretty inseparable from the actual impacts coming out of this. I mean, it's worth noting that we are, of course, in an election year and several months out. Well, more than that, but counting down, of course, to the November midterm elections, of which, of course, the Texas governorship is on the ballot. So, I mean, those implications can't be missed. But also, even a little bit deeper than that, do recall that it wasn't that long ago that it did seem that, well, the Texas governor was one of the most viable next ups or runners up or potential replacements, if you want to go that far, for the presidential nomination here. And it seemed like there was some coziness even there with some visits from the former president Donald Trump there at that point in time. Now, of course, that has fallen by the wayside just a wee bit with the Florida governor taking a little bit wind out of that kind of sails, if you're really of that kind of persuasion and line of thinking here. So I'm just saying there has been a lot of talk about that. I think a lot of focus is on this current election. Be very surprised if much else intervenes in between now and then. But it's, just relevant to bring up, I do feel here. Some more comments coming in here. John Brazelton, saying El Paso may have had a bank robbery, but the rest of the nation is acting like Juarez with multiple shootings and victims. I mean, there's a whole difference in what has gone on in Juarez on this side of the border for years now. So, I mean, that is definitely a difference here. RJ saying, furthermore, that if food and gas start costing people 50% or more of their income, living check to check, get the Biden did that sticker and quit blaming Putin here. All I can say is that post it on your own stuff. Stop bothering the gas station attendants by posting it over there. But I'm just a radio show, not a cop. What am I going to do here? And then more commentary coming about, some other recent companies being mentioned here, very much in the news here as of today, that El Paso Electric posting some, about $150 million, just shy, 146.2, according to the headline from El Paso Times anyway, in the first full year of new ownership, of course, them being acquired by the Infrastructure Investment Group there. So, I mean, there's been some talk about that as some solid performance here, and, more discussion about rate cases being brought up here when I'm sure we'll get into that here. But I mean, utilities and the supply of them is kind of important to the region here. So that will probably have its own place in the discussion here, because amongst the rate cases, there's a lot of levels that are looked at in terms of, the investment of what is needed. Essentially, it comes down to how well can the utility justify its expenditures and, deciding how much can go forth to, essentially ensuring supply here. They've been, of course, flying high a bit ever since, last winter. 2 winters ago now, technically, since we're definitely out of winter here now, knock on wood. Though I did have some of my friends up north talking about that they had a snow in April. So there's a lot of reasons I live here in El Paso, among other things. But again, they've been riding high, the local utility, that is, on the whole mention of, how well El Paso did versus other parts of even the state here. But we'll see how that all plays into the rate cases. I mean, that's an ongoing process. That's not a short one. Still, my kind of, despite this or even any of the other influences here, is that the case will continue on. It'll come back to about half of the rate that was being discussed previously. That would be my expectation here. Dottie Butler Torres saying messing with gas pumps is a federal offense. No, I'm not quite sure that falls into the same level as messing with a mailbox. If you ever saw any of those, the teenage trope going around bashing mailboxes with a baseball bat and any of that stuff, that's one of the quicker ways to get yourself a felony. So just, don't be dumb. Is if you're going to be dumb, you better be strong. There's the badly worded phrase. If you're going to be dumb, you better be tough is the better way to put it here. That applies there. The most regulation I'm aware of when it comes to gas tanks or gas stations would be more from the state level. You see all those stickers all over them from the state controller or the, scale measuring, those kind of things here. So I'm sure there would be federal implications, but primary enforcement, I think, would come from the state outside of, regular criminal proceedings if you're getting real salty about it and being real egregious with it. Again, just don't be dumb is what this comes down to for a lot of things here. But again, getting back to some of the political implications and being brought up about the whole border situation, of course, we are no stranger in this area to what was going on with those border inspection policies being put into place pretty unilaterally by, coming out of the governor's mansion, Texas Governor Greg Abbott declaring those primarily last week was the real impact that we saw of them whenever they technically got put into place. I mean, this has been part of a wave of policies that Abbott has been doing when it comes to border security efforts. Of course, the much more prevalent one has been, and the much more focused on one has been Operation Lone Star, which has seen the deployment of, for the Texas Military Department, which is its own unique thing that I think gets overlooked a lot in there. Sure, there's National Guard with it, but Texas has its own military department. The last time that really came up, and not that I'm hearkening back to this incident, but Jade Helm, which might be a trigger phrase for a lot out there, had, among other things, and I remember the release I got on this, had, well, oversight being done by generals within the Texas military department as part of the concern over how it was being done here. No, I'm not delving into that topic, but it's relevant to discuss here, in the fact that Texas has its own military department. And no, I'm not just talking about state level National Guard officials. So its own interesting thing. It kind of harkens back, I think, to more of the idea of what happened, well, when Texas used to have like Texas Rangers and that kind of a thing. Not exactly the same thing, but the same kind of Texas being, well, its own unique Texas kind of way specifically. But of course, that has been some of the primary efforts that have been focused on, well, nationally, among other things, and that we haven't had Governor Greg Abbott when he was in El Paso beginning of last week talking about some of those specific border security efforts and the way he was looking at, among other things, putting extra resources into it. Just a reminder of here's what he was saying when he was last in El Paso talking about specific physical security efforts.
As some of you have noticed, we are laying down razor wire, miles of it already. The reasons, again, for this are these. For one, it costs little, it's easy to deploy, but also serves as a deterrent of people crossing and coming into your community. And then the last thing I'll tell you about this, and that is these are just some of the strategies that the Senate is working on to deploy as we speak right now. Each county will have its own unique challenges. Each sheriff is going to have your own unique challenges. Texas has the flexibility and the capability to make sure that we can assist you in responding to whatever challenge you're dealing with. All we need is to maintain that high level of communication so that we can achieve the collaboration that you need.
Again, that was Governor Greg Abbott speaking last week to the Texas Border Sheriffs Coalition that was meeting in El Paso, along with also some, other sheriffs from other regions nearby. And as a reminder, along that way, we're getting some of that perspective coming up this week as we will be talking with, some particularly like from Arizona. They have their own particular border policies. We're decently familiar with the way it's also being done in New Mexico. So let's go a little bit further afield. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the week here. But again, Governor Greg Abbott having, all of those now extra inspections rescinded at this point, basically because of the agreements that have been put into place with these different other Mexico border state governments, the ones all adjoining Texas at the very least. So those four now having at least some kind of memorandum of understanding or enhanced security on the southern side of the border being put into place, apparently satisfying Abbott and leading to remove these 100% inspections and going back to the previous random inspections being done by DPS, specifically full border inspections on part of, federal agencies will still be continuing apace here. But those impacts, of course, politically cannot be ignored, but also the impact we've seen in this community. And also even beyond that, some more just disgusting incidents involving, people being abandoned, a child very specifically being abandoned along the border here by smugglers. So tell you what, we got to get more into that here after this next break, because we are due for that one right now. So coming out of this break, we'll get to this and more discussion of it and the impacts of it here. Again, an interesting conversation going on statewide about how some opponents of the peaceable we've been talking about have been quote unquote threading the needle. Interested to get y'all feedback on that as well. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. We'll also talk a little bit about how this is going to affect that whole trade, transit, and relocation, nearshoring that we've been talking about here in the borderlands. So stay tuned for all that and more here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 Morning News Update. El Paso police are investigating two separate crashes from over the weekend, both of them deadly. The first one on US 54 North near the Trans Mountain exit yesterday. Police say a motorcycle was trying to get past two cars by driving in between them. Police say he then lost control and crashed into the back of one of those cars. Investigators say he wasn't wearing a helmet and died at the scene. The other deadly accident this weekend involves a man being hit and killed on Loop 375 in West El Paso. It happened Saturday night around 9 o'clock. Police say 3 men were crossing the loop near Executive when a driver traveling westbound was unable to avoid one of them and hit him. The driver remained at the scene while the victim, still not ID'd by police, was transported to a hospital and later died. The other 2 men with him fled the scene. I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 Morning News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
On the 54 Patriot northbound at Liberty Expressway, there's a crash that is blocking the 601 eastbound transition ramp. Multi-vehicle crash there. Expect delays on the 54 Patriot. Loop 375 Trans Mountain westbound at the 54 Gateway, an injury accident. I-10 westbound at Mesa, that's exit 11. Accident with police on the scene. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We are seeing our first 90-degree temperatures of the season this week, which means we've got a hot week that lies ahead of us. But that's not the only increase. We also have increasing winds. Every single day, we should see breezy to gusty winds. In fact, some of these wind gusts could bring some patchy blowing dust over the next few days until our main wind maker arrives at the end of the week.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Breakfast Biscuit Sandwich, just $1. Wendy's knows a better breakfast starts with a better biscuit. That's why you can get a hot and buttery Wendy's breakfast biscuit with bacon or sausage, fresh cracked egg and cheese for just $1. Get your Wendy's Buck Biscuit Sandwich today. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's.
The new true crime podcast, White Eagle, investigates one of the largest cash heists in U.S. history. The robbery of over $7 million from an armored car warehouse. Was the ringleader a criminal mastermind, or was he a political pawn in a Cold War operation?
For some folks, they were boogeymen. They were, bandits hidden in the mountains and shadowy figures. For others, they were heroes.
Listen to White Eagle on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Anyone can get long COVID, even Caitlin, age 20.
I got COVID in November 2020. In January, I started having long-term problems. I was a varsity soccer player in high school, and now I get winded just from walking. I can't remember things. It's just unbearable.
Getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is the best way to prevent long COVID. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Staples Print and Marketing Services helps small businesses print big with wide format signs and banners. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 5/28. Visit staples.com/signage for details. This is your sign to print big at Staples. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. All those ways are to say that there's a lot of ways to get at us. Comment on the show, offer your 2 cents, also see the progress of the show if you're into that kind of a thing. But all those platforms that we're on, including on air, this is not to neglect them at all, just some added features on some of those other places. Though through the iHeartRadio app, there is an increasing ability to, leave us a message if you really want to here. We'll have that up a little bit later in the program because was getting some questions about exactly how to do so. You just got to be in the right place, and you'll find, again, that little microphone to leave us a message. Just basically make sure you're tuned into the station. So basically find our broadcast on the iHeartRadio app by listening to News Radio 690 KTSM, and there'll be a little button that shows it to you here. I'll try to put it up on screen here for you. But you got that microphone button right about here on the screen, in the top right-hand side of it, next to the stop button on the playback here, and that's where you hold that. you can leave us a message, but we'll get a little bit further into that here. A lot of questions coming in right now, actually, as a matter of fact, on, well, some of these issues with deportations and, well, Title 42 as it's currently going in. Also, Monica Cervantes dropping that like over on the page. Do appreciate that. Flaco Jimenez asking, what if illegal immigrants were bused to the nearest border crossing? Oop, drop down to me. Were bused to the nearest border crossing and sent right back. Can it really be that easy? Yes and no is the unsimple answer here for you. Yes, in certain terms, that's what have the expulsions have been done. Another, I think, overlooked fact of Title 42 and the reason that it has been such a, I think, unsuccessful policy, like, sure, it solves it in the immediate sense, but it really does nothing to deal with, well, even just the amount of people that we're talking about here. Sure, there's been some cooperation with Mexico, but as CBS News, amongst other outlets, note that, sure, Mexico does agree to take some, but not all. Very specifically, they are only allowing those from Mexico and then nearby states, of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Those are the only points of origin that they are accepting people from. So we're talking about anywhere, even from Belize, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and points either further south or literally anywhere else in the world. Mexico will not accept them. So sure, there can be some that are expelled within hours, but for those, flights have been getting used, among other things. I mean, there was the Haitian incident that happened middle of last year where there were tens of thousands, to my understanding, showing up in that one contested area of the border near Del Rio, which was just overwhelming, a lot of that. And those had to involve, well, flights, among other things, being repatriated back to, well, Haiti, among other places, because, well, Mexico wouldn't accept them, even if there had been some kind of temporary legal status within that country itself here. I mean, the situation on the ground spoke for itself when there were temporary ID cards that were issued by a variety of different countries being dealt with there. So, again, Title 42, the removal of it without a plan in place is a very bad idea. I don't feel like that should be a controversial statement to say. Even have been some within this state hoping to campaign on the other side of the aisle that have been saying as such here. So seeing a surprising amount of bipartisan support for that phrase here, which I've been saying for a while now. But Title 42 on its own was never a great policy. It wasn't even a policy. It was a one-line action item that had almost no regard for the consequences it caused on its own here. So again, would love for lawmakers to actually do something about this along with this, pass a law. I don't know any of that good stuff. That's literally their job description, but some more commentary along with that. Maria Coleman saying there's no way the illegals are being bussed out of El Paso. Why are we having CBP raiding stash houses and risking their lives while local and federal officials are possibly housing them in our neighborhoods, referring to a previous comment of hers, referring to a situation in her neighborhood. Again, to see all these comments, because there's more than we can even get to, over primarily on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk El Paso. But John Browston saying further, it could be that easy, but I think meant to say CBP agents would have to prevent them from being exported. The Biden administration can't let that many future voters leave. Again, that's getting a little bit saucy for the reality of it here. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, there have been a lot of expulsions. But again, another small fact about Title 42 and why, as a policy, it's got a lot of issues is the fact that it doesn't come with any of the other implications that actual full immigration court proceedings do. Now, there's quite the backlog within immigration court, so I'm not saying this would be a simple solution, but the fact of the matter is that these removals, because there is almost no processing, there is no day in court, there is no even immigration judge, which is not the regular kind of judiciary form of government judge we're talking about here. They are executive branch employees, just straight technically speaking, but there's none of that then attachment of the cannot enter for a certain amount of years kind of thing, because it's just and that's why we keep, among other things, I believe, keep seeing the repeat offenders, people that keep coming back in, because even with Mexico, unless they're actually following through and taking them back to their points of origin, we keep seeing people come back, and that has been, just to my understanding, demoralizing for, well, this CBP and Border Patrol agents that have been dealing with this situation, among other things. Flaco Jimenez is saying what would make a lot of sense here, so then Mexico should enforce their own immigration policies or face consequences. I believe Trump had that taken care of. To an extent, yes. Again, the revamp of the Guardia Nacional, the Mexican National Guard, into essentially a border security forces was an advent that happened under the previous administration that has seemingly, well, I believe they're still in place to an extent, but we've been hearing more about this new phrase that we've brought up a couple times in the show, but I don't think we've really dealt with this idea of anti-migration, because technically there are still agreements in place between the U.S. and Mexico on the federal levels of the, well, not letting them come here, not letting them transit through Mexico, but essentially, Todd Bensman, among others, previous guests in the show and other major shows in the meantime, has been talking about, well, there is essentially this permissiveness that seems to have come into place here on the order of tens of thousands being allowed to transit through Mexico because, I mean, you got to look at the way things previously were, of course, because Mexico's previous policy was sure immigrants have some pretty stringent requirements on them. I mean, anyone who has actually investigated what it takes to do anything long-term in Mexico as a non-citizen, it is difficult, just plainly put. I mean, there are a hell of a lot of requirements even to just own property or land, much less become politically involved. It's stringent as hell. That's, I can say, without any bashfulness or uncertainty or, extra vagueness in the statements. It's just difficult. But Mexico, of course, that previous federal policy has essentially been to, as long as you're not staying here, go right ahead. And that has kind of been the, gray area that has existed when it comes to the policies back and forth across these administrations and supposedly back in place under parts of this administration, particularly the whole, federal requirement of reinstating the Migrant Protection Protocol's MPP, so-called Remain in Mexico policy, that there were more agreements supposedly back in place with Mexico, but, it certainly has not been of the exact same tone and tenor as discussions happened under the previous administration. And I still think it's pretty fair to say that while, no, Mexico has not paid for any physical wall construction on this side of the border, that they did effectively through their own expenditures, create their own, essentially, again, through the Mexican National Guard, border security force, and actually were enforcing, which was not a terrifically prevalent feature before that, their own southern border security that would make, just strictly logistically speaking, a hell of a lot more sense. I mean, sure, it's a little bit of a winding border between Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize, but a hell of a lot smaller than the U.S. and Mexico border. It's like going to the short end of a funnel as opposed to the wide one, but who am I to judge here? RJ saying that damn Skippy Mexico policies aren't exactly inviting. Head north, young man, sums it up. Yeah, that's another pretty good way to put it here in a different phrase that I hadn't thought about, so I appreciate the idea of it. Because, yeah, that was pretty much, hey, as long as you don't stop here, you're fine. That has pretty much been the Mexico official policy. So, among other things, the reason we were talking about all of this was what Texas Governor Greg Abbott has now, essentially bilaterally between states gotten into place. The individual state governors here. I do wonder, I mean, of course, we've heard a little bit of pushback and some actual requests from pushback, among others, El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar asking for the Biden administration to look into these stoppages and the impediments on international trade that had put on the state level, though, of course, this wasn't exactly pending on the judicial level yet, but if it were to have gotten to that level already, this would now be a moot point since those impediments have been removed. But I don't fully expect that this will go away anytime soon. And of course, the statewide political implications still exist here. I mean, this was one heck of a stump speech moment when it came to, the Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke campaign, one that he took full advantage of, visiting a lot of different areas, including in those those places where those agreements weren't fully in place yet, and next to Nuevo Laredo and Far, Texas, which was an interesting little. You ever look at a map of it? Just search it up on Google Maps when you get a chance. It's a weird little area that technically exists. That more in the Reynosa area, actually, now that I'm looking at the map myself here. But those implications and what that's going to mean when it comes to this further election, let's get into that here after this next break, because we got more to get to here. And again, some statewide mild congratulatory, but also wondering how this needle will continue to be threaded, because a Democrat candidate dissing the Democrat president, not usually a great groundwork for, continuing to have support of your own party. But we'll get into that and a whole lot more coming out of this break. And again, a question that we kind of have out there, and we'll, go ahead and open up those phone lines on about how do you feel about, these, political proceedings over this last week. The number to call that we'll open up right now, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the 54 Patriot northbound at Liberty Expressway, there's a crash that is blocking the 601 eastbound transition ramp. Multi-vehicle crash there. Expect delays on the 54 Patriot. Loop 375 Trans Mountain westbound at the 54 Gateway, an injury accident. I-10 westbound at Mesa, that's exit 11. Accident with police on the scene. Hey, Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Brake Masters.
Before your day is done, Brake Masters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Brake Masters shape. Download coupons at brakemasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Brake Masters. We give you an honest break.
If you're 45 or older, this message could save your life. Health experts now recommend starting regular colorectal cancer screening at age 45. Colorectal cancer is the leading cause of cancer death, but it's preventable through regular screening. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. You've got the guts to prevent colorectal cancer. Talk to your doctor about your options and visit cdc.gov/screenforlife for more information.
Hey folks, this is Andrew J. Polk, and I love supporting local and experiencing all the world has to offer, which is why I love Enhanced Flavors, your local source of over 40 quality flavored olive oils and balsamic vinegars. You don't have to scour the globe or even leave home to taste all that's offered in extra virgin olive oil and great flavored varieties from Italy, Greece, Spain, and Tunisia, and certified balsamic vinegar straight from the Modena province of Italy. Look for Enhanced Flavors at your favorite farmers markets to spice up your life, or find them online at enhancedflavors.com.
As a marketer, you want to reach everyone, adults, teens, millennials, but it's not like these groups all hang out in the same place, right? Actually wrong. They're all right here, listening to radio commercials just like this one. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV. In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? Visit iHeartAdvertising.com and get AM/FM working for you. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Do you promise to love, honor, and cherish, forsaking all others?
I do.
I do.
And now, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you roommates. Go forth.
That's not the vow you took. But if struggles with CPAP have you and your spouse sleeping in separate rooms, it might be time to look into Inspire. Inspire works inside the body with just the click of a remote. That's right, just a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire. Sleep apnea innovation.
Talk to your doctor to see if Inspire is right for you. Review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
If your company needs to spring into efficient hiring, then check out Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to get at the show, including that phone line we got open right now. So however you're listening, you can dial, if you got a phone anyway, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot of comments coming in right now, as we do throughout the show here. RJ pointing out since we're talking about politics and the realities of them, particularly in relation to border security here, that when polls oversample Democrats and Biden is 34%, Beto has to distance himself. Even Beto isn't that stoned, though I will note that we are, let's just see how Wednesday works out here in the borderland here with, that little date 420 coming up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let's just keep your nose open as you drive around town and see if you notice any extra muskiness. We'll see how it works out here. I mean, it wasn't just happenstance that New Mexico was required to put that in, the state level legalized marijuana sales at the start of this month here, but maybe that's getting a little bit too conspiratorial. Anyway, Felipe Jimenez also bringing up that Mexico did have to pay in the sense that they didn't have to feed, house, hospitalize, educate, incarcerate, etc., so many people. And yes, that's very true. Again, technically, they did not pay any money to this side of the border, to the U.S. government, for any construction, but there certainly were expenditures. And my argument still remains that even though it may have fallen by the wayside now, they did construct essentially a, virtual wall of their own, partly based on, manpower and the size of force they deployed from literally the Mexican National Guard, Guardia Nacional, that you were even able to, at certain points, see if you were driving along like the border highway or the Paisano area next to the border fence. So, I mean, again, they did not pay anything to this side, and that is a point that is often brought out on this program, but they definitely did something on their own, in their own way, on their own side. And that, I think, oftentimes gets overlooked here. More comments coming in here. Maria Coleman, RJ, Black Jimenez again, and more. John Brazelton, Louis Pinato, and more over there. Dottie Butler Torres on the social media. So if you want to chime in there, you're more than welcome to. But again, phone line open right now, 915-544-5876. 915-544-KTSM. We have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
We're back on immigration.
Yep.
So I was going to say, Escobar wants them to, I guess, investigate Governor Abbott and the closure of the bridges.
Mm-hmm.
She should be asking to investigate Mayorkas, who is willfully and knowingly violating the Constitution and violating his oath of office. The man should be in jail. He needs to be impeached. But more importantly, Biden and them sent Kamala to the Central American countries to see what the root cause of the problem was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when President Trump was in office, he was threatened to cut back the billions of dollars that we send to the Central American countries to get them to move, take some action. The opposite, Biden always says the opposite. He's throwing more money. So on top of the billions we were already sending, he increased the amount to the Central American countries. Well, that's not mitigating anything. They're still migrating to the United States of America. So what's happening is we're sending more than what we were before in billions of dollars. They're coming into the U.S. Now we're housing them. We're busing them. We're educating them. We're giving them access to medical care. They're going to be overwhelming our hospitals and our schools. So now we're spending billions of dollars on them while they're here. In addition to that, I was hearing that last year, the government entered into a contract for apartments for billions of dollars once again, and many of them were not used. Now we know they have a $90 billion contract with Endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
That's $15 million a month for 6 months. So they're just throwing good money after really, really bad money. And regarding O'Rourke,
mm-hmm.
he was quick to throw President Biden under the bus when his poll numbers were at 33%.
Yep.
But you didn't hear a peep until then. Now he says, and at that time he said he shouldn't be lifting Title 42 without a plan. But I think here locally and in other comments on other stations, he said 42 has got to go. It was a bad policy from the beginning. And now he's not qualifying anything. He's not saying we should have a plan in place first. I guess he came home and heard enough from his other progressives that you can't say that. You have to say it's got to go. So now he's on that bandwagon that it's got to go. So we can't get any honesty from any of our elected officials or those that are running for office, because they are working against their own constituency. Escobar knows the billions of dollars we've thrown away and the billions and billions and billions that we're now spending in the U.S. with those that are coming in. And she knows what's going to come in if Title 42 is lifted. She's aware of the dangers. Since October, I was hearing that we've caught 24 or 23 suspected or known terrorists, 3 of them here in El Paso.
Mm.
Now, how safe does that make people feel about people crossing through El Paso? I thought they were vetting them really well. And didn't County Judge Samaniego say, well, we know what we're doing. We know how to vet them, and we know how to send them out on buses. Well, I'd like to know where they're sending them on buses and who's doing the vetting, and how is it that 3 terrorists got through in El Paso? Maybe they didn't come through one of the NGOs, I'm not sure. But the point is, there's absolutely no way that we can feel any sort of confidence that's happening here in El Paso, our very own border, is safe. And it's not going to get safe. It's going to get worse. And our Congresswoman Escobar, she ignores our pleas. You can send an email and ask a question and not get responses. And then I hear our county judge, saying that they're working with other organizations. Mm-hmm. Has anybody been on their website to see the list of organizations that they're involved with on the outreach? I can assure you they're left-leaning. They have no middle-of-the-ground ideas. And then now they want to, how is it, vet? Oh, no, I'm thinking of the Department of Education. I'll get into that tomorrow because that's even more frightening.
Fair enough.
But this idea that Escobar or any of her colleagues know exactly what's going to happen or exactly how great they are, including Samaniego, are delusional. And we need to be bold about it. We need to put some signs out there and, statistics. Escobar, and this is what you've got. You know the consequences of your vote. So...
Yeah, I think
Those are my comments.
I think that last part particularly important to remember in these kind of circumstances that consequences of the vote is ultimately what this comes down to for what the average person can do to it. I mean, you mentioned a couple of ways trying to reach out and get to it here, but I mean, holding people accountable in the ballot box, of which again this will be one of both those offices you just mentioned there, both the county judge and the congressional representation for a region, as well as all congressional representation heard within our broadcast area here is going to be up on the ballot here in November. So that's just the subtext back of the mind of all of this here. And we'll be doing more focus on some of the elections as we get closer to some of it here. But furthermore, I mean, the issues that come along with this are significant. I think primarily from the county judge's perspective, probably along the lines of, what nonprofit organizations the area have been doing, not exactly the busing like Abbott is talking about it, but more of the, providing tickets from nonprofit groups to get people to their final destinations essentially here. But tell you what, we got to take that break for the top of the hour here right now. We'll have to get more into this. So I think for the point in the call, you have a good one there.
Thank you.
Absolutely here. And again, we have that phone line open. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot more to talk about here, particularly as we get into the second hour of the program here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Again, 915-544-5876. Back after this break with more.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On the 54 Patriot northbound at Liberty Expressway exit, there is a crash that's blocking the right lane and the exit ramp, the transition ramp. An injury accident, Loop 375 westbound at the 54 Gateway. Watch for an accident I-10 westbound at Mesa. And watch for a crash Lee Trevino Drive northbound at Rojas, causing a backup. Take Loma Land or Pelicano as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Thank you, El Paso and surrounding areas, for helping us be El Paso's #1 dealer in new Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram sales in March. As a gesture of our gratitude, we've extended all our Ram Truck Month deals like 0 down, 0% interest for 72 months and no payments for 90 days.
Buy now and save thousands on a huge inventory of new and certified pre-owned vehicles. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. All new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third row seating. 0 APR for 72 months. 0 payments for 90 days. We've partnered with even more aggressive lenders. With
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The GOP is celebrating after a federal judge strikes down the mask mandate on planes and other forms of public transportation. Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt tweeted, "COVID authoritarianism belongs on the ash heap of history," while Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs tweeted, "No more masks." The judge said the CDC overstepped its authority and declared the rule invalid. The State Department is calling Russia's recent attacks in Ukraine a campaign of terror. Spokesperson Ned Price said Russia's strikes in Lviv are despicable aggression against Ukrainians. He also echoed the Pentagon that the attacks are targeting military and military-adjacent installations. There are still no plans for President Biden to visit Ukraine.
We would not outline from here or anywhere from the government who, if, and when, for security reasons. So we wouldn't have any details to preview regardless.
So said White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. Ukrainian President Zelensky told CNN he wants Biden to visit and believes he will. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson recently visited Zelensky in Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv. The Florida Department of Education is rejecting 41% of math textbooks submitted for use in the state's public schools next year. Rick Hoschel explains.
Governor Ron DeSantis addressed the issue at a press conference in Jacksonville, saying the 54 books violated Florida's benchmarks for excellent student thinking, or BEST standards. Education officials say the rejected books included references to critical race theory, Common Core, and social emotional learning. The DOE says the highest number of rejected books were for grades K through 5. Despite the rejections, the DOE says every core math course and grade is covered with at least one textbook.
A Texas man charged in connection with last year's Capitol riot wants his case moved out of Washington, D.C. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. New York City Mayor Eric Adams won't rule out bringing back COVID restrictions as coronavirus rises in the Big Apple. Scott Pringle reports.
Health officials expect the city's COVID risk level to go from low to medium real soon, with the number of new coronavirus cases continuing to rise. Mayor Eric Adams was asked if he's considering bringing back the school mask mandate and the Key to NYC vaccination requirement program.
We're going to look at the data, look at the information, look at the advice from the doctors, and then we're going to make the appropriate decision how to move forward. I'm not going to be ashamed to come to the microphone and say we're moving in another direction.
The city's health commissioner is advising folks now to wear masks indoors and get tested if at a holiday gathering this past weekend.
A man who led the EPA under former President Trump is running for the U.S. Senate. Scott Pruitt filed as a candidate for the seat being vacated by Oklahoma Republican Senator Jim Inhofe. Pruitt's nomination as EPA chief was confirmed by the U.S. Senate in February of 2017. He resigned in July of 2018 in the face of numerous ethics investigations. He's a former state senator and served 2 terms as state attorney general. President Biden is heading to Portland and Seattle. Jordan Christmas has more.
President Joe Biden heads to the Pacific Northwest later this week. Biden will be in Portland on Thursday to promote his agenda and the sweeping infrastructure bill he signed late last year. He will then mark Earth Day on Friday in Seattle, pitching a clean energy economy. The White House says Biden will also talk about efforts to lower costs for American families.
A North Carolina woman is becoming a second-time lottery winner. Spring Hope resident Judy Marshburn won a whopping $700,000 from a scratch-off ticket. However, this isn't her first time winning big. Back in 2008, she won over $300,000 in a Cash 5 jackpot. Marshburn told lottery officials she doesn't plan to stop and that next time she's coming for the million. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Bank. That's bank. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by the Texas Department of Transportation. As you drive through Texas, keep in mind that "don't mess with Texas" actually means don't litter. Keep Texas roads clean and beautiful by holding on to your litter until you can get to a trash can. Always keep a litter-free state of mind and don't mess with Texas. A message brought to you by TxDOT.
Anyone can get long COVID, even Rob, age 22.
I got COVID in September of 2020, and a few weeks later, I started to have long-term problems. I used to run 5 to 6 miles a day. Now, when I walk up a flight of stairs, I'm gasping for air. It feels like my brain is clouded and I can't think straight.
Getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is the best way to prevent long COVID. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Comfort Keepers Las Cruces is now hiring. Call 575-521-4400.
We first opened about 10 years ago. We were small, just a few of us, but it was exciting. I always dreamt of having my own business. It was kind of slow at first, but things started picking up. We had big plans, but in our wildest dreams, we never thought we'd have this much work. Yeah, with so many businesses caught off guard by the storm, Reed Waste Management has never been busier.
What will become of your business after a disaster? Nearly 2/3 of businesses aren't prepared for an emergency, and 40% of businesses that experience a disaster never recover. Make an emergency plan now, before it's too late. For a free online tool that helps you develop an emergency plan to keep your business up and running should disaster strike, visit ready.gov/business. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the American Red Cross, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, along with those, where you can leave your comment, all that good stuff here, and also see the show if you're into that kind of thing. You can also give us a call. We have those phone lines open right now, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM is the number to dial there. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today, including, well, border security and immigration, which could also be a little bit more largely put our focus kind of constantly, at very least lately, but more specifically, what we're talking about is, of course, the continuing fallout, dust settling from Governor Greg Abbott's orders of the last week, these bilateral agreements he set up with the individual states along the Texas border, but in Mexico here, so those 4 states, and what that's going to mean, plus, of course, the campaigning that comes along with all of this, the political implications, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of the question of the day that I'm sure we'll get some interesting responses are, how do you feel about, well, at least the Texas Tribune with their article titled here, really cementing the question in my mind, saying Beto O'Rourke carefully threads needle on border policy as Democrats grapple with the issue. So, question then, how do you feel about the way he was, well, talking about this and dealing with it last week? Among other things, brought up our last caller there, the concept of there being this, well, essentially having to still go against the governor, because if he doesn't call it the governor's policies, why is he even campaigning, would be a reasonable question to ask. But then beyond that, also going against the administration, with the Biden administration not exactly doing, well, a Democrat in Texas any favors. So how do you feel about the way this has progressed over at the very least the last week here? So kind of question of the day, but we don't have to get that grandiose with it. A lot of comments coming in on a lot of these issues. D. Alvarado saying stop, focus on the NGOs that are housing illegals, biggest scam ever. Whenever you hear organizations say they are transporting them, their families in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Idaho, I assure you these families don't exist. I will say that any time that there has been an organization that gets a contract for something, we'll get this so many tens, or in these cases, often hundreds of millions of dollars for performing a specific service across administrations here, not working out well. Just that's like the one constant, because it doesn't matter almost the political affiliation with it. The federal government is not good at this. So even trying to contract with another organization, the competencies that to be built up, well, they just don't seem to exist very much now, do they here? So what seems to happen for the most part in El Paso, again, talking about, well, essentially what is being done with individuals coming through, not so much NGOs, but like the local nonprofit community, is that they will essentially be, when we've had these real surges in our local area, which has even been going back to, in my reporting career, 2014, when we're talking about when there was the unaccompanied migrant crisis down in South Texas. There were still some families involved in that, and largely those family units were getting sent here to then be processed through, well, local facilities, essentially, and then getting released out, recognizance isn't the right phrase, but kind of gets the right idea across there for them to then await their final trials and such, and asylum claims, all of that we went through. I went to some of the shelters and the facilities that were being essentially turned on almost overnight from the local nonprofits to just kind of deal with the number of people. But these were not holding facilities. That's a key difference I want to make here, is because it was not a house them for an indefinite period of time, but largely pass them on through. So there would be some clothes and stuff donated from the community here, but largely the idea was then through donated funds, get them a Greyhound bus ticket to wherever their destination was, wherever they were essentially trying to reunite with whatever resources they already had in this country, kind of thing here. So that's about the only kind of bright line difference I want to make there when talking about this here. But Barbara Carrasco also saying that she's talking about an $89 million, not $89 billion contract with Endeavor. I mean, still a lot of money. I mean, what's the phrase? Billion here or a million here, million. It was originally million here, million there. You start talking real money, though that phrase can now, I think, in the modern day, be said more accurately as a billion here and a billion there, and you start talking real money. But, enough about the federal budget. Anyway, let's go back to that phone line now. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We have a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Andrew.
Hey there, Andrew. What's on your mind?
Yes, I was reading Veronica Escobar's and other politicians' letter or critique concerning Governor Abbott. That was put out by KFOX.
Yep, and you can also find the letter here. Let's see, the link takes me to. I want to say it is the Congresswoman's website. Yeah, you can find it on escobar.house.gov. Again, the letter also co-signed by the rest of the Texas Democrat delegation to the, federal legislature here. So, yeah, there are some statements been put out by the overall group in addition to the statement of the letter here. But, yeah, that is accessible and has some interesting things. Again, this came out last week ahead of the essential complete curtailing of those extra restrictions that Abbott had put into place. He has now removed based on those agreements with those individual governors. But essentially calling this out, this letter does, is saying that, among other things, federal responsibility that a state seems to be taking on. So similar kind of things that have been discussed previously among other things, for Operation Lone Star and the associated.
Well, there's no interference with federal laws, but in the letter they do express their concern. One of them is Abbott's recent deputization of state troopers to conduct inspections of commercial vehicles. Well, I find it strange, or maybe it's just pure ignorance on her part, or plain ignorant, I should say, that she doesn't realize under the transportation code, I'm sorry, not transportation code, Texas Administrative Code, the department, meaning the Department of Public Safety, has the authorization to inspect any commercial vehicle. And then she goes on to say that this is an affront that jeopardizes the Biden's efforts to bring lower prices and assure the supply chain. Well, Biden's energy policies contributed to this. Can't say it's Putin and his oil. We shouldn't have been buying oil from Putin in the first place. And last, Biden was the one that encouraged this open door policy, inviting people from all over the world to come through our southern border. I applaud Abbott for trying to do something, because Beto O'Rourke and Veronica Escobar have not provided or suggested any solutions.
That's very true here. And again, that is a frustration I've had with legislators writ large, that in all the talk about should or shouldn't we have Title 42, what comes after seems to be getting very much overlooked here. And just as an added note to that, Abbott has said that he has not ruled out bringing that policy back should he feel that the situation dictated. So again, the reason he put that in place was, according to his own office here, basically that there were concerns over Title 42 and the human smuggling impact. There have been some other, I guess some have put it fringe benefits, for lack of a better term, about, unsafe vehicles taken off the road. And sure, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it wasn't the point of it. But we saw, the supply issue in our area was probably exacerbated by that. So sure, Putin wasn't really a cause of it, but the national issue, not exactly just from this 1 week stoppage here. There were a lot of impacts, but that is, you bring up a very valid point here, that of all of the talk about Title 42, should we have it, shouldn't we have it, what comes next has been just terminally overlooked in this whole damn process.
Yes, and these politicians who are against it. Beto O'Rourke was one that says, they're enforcing criminal trespass laws on private property. Well, you're not supposed to be trespassing on somebody's property, but it's not only that. There are so many felonies that are being committed along the Texas-Mexico border. People don't realize it, but just crossing with a kid and abandoning that child along the border, like these people have been doing, that's a second-degree felony right there, and that's also engaging in organized criminal activity. Come on, as Biden says, come on, man, you guys need to wake up.
I would love to see a lot more enforcement, specifically on the cartels. I think if anything, if you really want to, thread the needle here, as the phrase of the day, I guess here, but from the Biden administration, making it seem like, okay, we don't want to piss off the progressives in our party, but we still also want to seem stronger on this. Bring down the damn hammer on the cartels. You've got, again, the example, coming out from the U.S. Border Patrol El Paso sector, they've got the pictures up over on their Facebook page. I'm staring at them right now, of the 3-year-old abandoned here. You want to talk about something outrageous that could be very well justified in terms of forming new policy to deal with this, as opposed to this on a very weak don't come kind of phrasing, like, come on, man. We keep coming back to that phrase here when it comes to all of it, because it's the best one I can think of.
Well, Okay, right there, you mentioned the child.
Mm.
Right there, you have three felonies right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
Abandoning, endangering a child. You also have human trafficking,
Mhm.
and you also have engaging in organized criminal activity. All three of those put together, that just jacks it up to a first-degree felony, which can get those people right there. If a peace officer, any peace officer, doesn't have to be DPS, could arrest those people, and that's up to 99 years in East Texas over there.
Yeah. I mean, again, the cartels and the fact that they are raking in money with all of this, and the fact that the rhetoric of the administration, the way we keep talking about it, keeps playing into their hands. It's frustrating as hell. And even before these kind of incidents, I mean, before this, we had, the two, like, what was it, like 15-month-olds being literally dropped down the border fence. I mean, it's a travesty that I don't feel like should be at all partisan to say this is bad and shouldn't happen, and yet it seems to keep breaking down that way.
Granted. I turn the mic over to you, Andrew. Have a good evening.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call. This is important stuff, so you have a good one as well.
Thanks.
All right, appreciate it. Actually, tell you what, we got to get into that next break right now. Overdue with it a little bit, but I tend to get a little bit fired up and unhappy about some of these situations here. We got a lot of comments coming in, and we'll get to more of the calls here in the line. Again, if you're wanting to join in, add your 2 cents along that way. Phone lines are open now. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We're not just talking about immigration, but boy, does it seem to keep cropping up. We got a few other things that we'll delve into here as well, including the impacts on some of these, El Paso economic efforts and all of that. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here after this break. I'm your News Radio 690, KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Let's start off with some good news. The Liberty Expressway eastbound exit off the 54 Patriots back open. The right lane is back open. Gateway Boulevard northbound at McCombs, an accident reported. Entry accident, Trans Mountain Loop 375 westbound at the 54 Gateway. And way up on the Gateway Boulevard northbound at Stan Roberts, you got a disabled truck that is blocking the right lane. Stay left. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
It's $1,000 in your hand.
$1,000.
$1,000.
No NFTs or ESGs. It's $1,000 straight to you.
That is awesome.
Listen every hour from 9 through 5 weekdays for your chance to win.
$1,000 in your hand is brought to you by Approved Auto. Ride out in your new ride in less than an hour. Get payments as low as $159 a month. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. If you got your license and you got a job, they smell a deal. The deals are sweeter at Approved Auto, 8498 Alameda.
This report is sponsored by Brakemasters.
Before your day is done, Brakemasters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Brakemasters shape. Download coupons at Brakemasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Brakemasters. We give you an honest break.
Help DEA keep our communities safe and healthy by participating in National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, Saturday, April 30th. Take action right in your own home by cleaning out your family medicine cabinet of unneeded medications. Keep them safe, clean them out, take them back. To find a collection site near you, visit DEATakeback.com. Do your part to lower overdose deaths and prevent prescription drug misuse before it starts. Visit DEATakeback.com. That's DEATakeback.com.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, I get real cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make $200 to $300 this year.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code FUN for 25 cents a gallon or more cash back on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code FUN to earn 25 cents a gallon or more on your first tank. That's code FUN.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I never thought that 5 minutes could make so much difference in the lives of two people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show. Of course, we have got those social media pages up for us, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, under either Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Also, that phone line open right now. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. If you're calling in the middle of a segment, might have to put you on hold here briefly, but just stay in the line and we'll get with you in short order here. So we'll get back with those calls in a second. But some of these comments coming in, Flaca Jimenez saying that dropping a child over the border wall is literally an anchor baby. You get a little bit of the dark humor going on there, but also it just, oh my goodness. I don't know why, among other things, this is the part, because there's so much bad things involving the organized crime on the border and all of that, but this is the part that just really gets my blood boiling more than almost anything else. Not that any of it's good, like, oh, the rest of it gets a pass. This is the part that ticks me off. No, it all ticks me off. This just really pushes me over the edge here sometimes here. But RJ actually asking a decent question here. Why do I feel that those illegals you reported on are still waiting on trials? And this is actually, you bring up a surprisingly deep point here, because this is part of the reason that no real politician has been almost willing to touch this issue, much less any of our elected officials, either regionally or those nationally that harp on this the most, because it's a great thing to beat the drum about, but actually solving it and dealing with it, well, let's just put it this way. Citation from migrationpolicy.org, a think tank on this issue, that the average immigration case completed in January 2022 has been pending for about 2.5 years, with some courts seeing average waits in excess of 3 years. So that is why Title 42 was what it's come down to, even for this administration, because as much as they're saying, oh, we got to get rid of it now, it had been pretty reliant, because by putting things through that and not actually having to go through the court system, again, immigration courts, which is not a judicial branch court, but rather an executive branch courts, as much as it can be called. So different situations, which is why, among other things, in the previous administration, there had been more, well, essentially presidential executive orders that were able to change how it functioned than that whole legal kerfuffle. But again, anything going through these does not have to go through the regular judicial branch, which is why they progress differently. But again, even through Title 42, didn't even have to go through those. So it was a simple way to say, oh no, we're reducing the backlog while keeping the numbers short and keeping people out of the system. And so that's really why, even as the administration is doing the active ending of Title 42, again, end of May 23rd in this case, going to be that date, that is going to cause problems that there has been no good solutions dealt with. I don't know if they're going to wait to rely on legislators to find a solution or just say, screw it, let's just go forward with it. I'm hoping it's not the latter, but we seem to be getting increasingly close to it. But that's, again, kind of one of the background issues going into all of this, is that Title 42 has been keeping cases outside of the immigration court system because they don't even register on it, technically speaking. So as soon as this comes in, any real solution that is doing more comprehensively, even just comprehensive immigration reform, not even the whole comprehensive border security aspects that I would still love to see included, will have to address this, which is why I don't think any politician who has any long-term aspirations of holding office, which is unfortunately seemingly most of them, is wanting to touch this with a 10-foot pole. They're wanting to skirt around it and say, oh no, this is bad and someone should totally do something with it. Again, I am not happy with the way this is progressing and the way they are talking about this, but the fact that there is just this complete lack of action on it, or at least any serious considerations and proposals that have come forth here. Again, the most serious thing I have even seen from legislatures, Texas Senator John Cornyn, more specifically, he has signed on to and is leading some of the efforts on to essentially delay the removal of Title 42, a minimum of a couple of months, and then a couple months more once a solution is put into place that will take time to do the transition. Essentially, there is still no, and here is what will actually replace it, but rather creating space for a replacement. It's a whole lot of kicking the can down the field. In the meantime, well, we here in the borderland are definitely caught in the middle here, but enough for me for a moment here. Let's get more back to Maria Comment also saying too many entities are profiting from the current situation. No kidding there. What will the bus and charter companies do? Well, I mean, we've already got some pretty steady bus traffic around here. Charter companies, that's a more interesting question, one we might have to look into a little bit further here. But let's go back to those phone lines right now. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have a call here on the line here. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
Ben on the east side.
Hey there, Ben. What's on your mind?
Well, I don't think we need to worry about it anymore because the Biden administration has decided to ask tell the Border Patrol now that they have to allow exemptions for different people coming across the border. Not too sure if you've heard about this. If anybody has a physical problem, disability, or mental illness, they are supposed to be allowed into the country. Pregnancy is supposed to be an exemption. Lack of access to safe housing or shelter. Anybody who has lack of access to safe housing or shelter has to be allowed into the country. And anybody under 21 and over 70 qualifies for an exemption so they can come into the country. And that's before getting rid of Title 42.
Right, yeah. So the 2 points you're bringing up there, the current exemptions are in place, and going back even a little bit further, those were some of the major points being brought up both locally and then more nationally across the entire border area by a lot of, advocacy groups and, advocates for, against essentially the previous administration's policy, particularly with the, MPP, so-called Remain in Mexico. Those were some of the major gripes and policies being put forth. And as we saw, as much as Title 42 was supposed to be this essentially absolute policy, there were already built in these exemptions. I mean, it started with unaccompanied minors primarily and then got further extended into these other so-called protected categories or increased risk, personal risk categories here, of which, I'm aware of the ones you're referring to there, and even sometimes beyond that if there was unsafe housing situations within some of the shelters in Mexico, in Juarez, in our own region specifically.
How much is this going to cost us? We're basically just opening our borders, and I think it all goes to, again, just overwhelming our system, where we're going to have a complete collapse because we can't afford these people. We can't. We went to war with a country that controls resources that we all need for existence. Grain, fertilizer, minerals, energy, even seafood comes from Russia. Does that make any sense to go to war with people that you absolutely depend upon because we've disarmed ourselves here at home? And we're taking in people that we can't afford, and so we starve our own people. Does that make any sense?
I mean, in a couple of ways there. I mean, you're talking about two separate concepts that we're looking at very much in collision here right now because, the whole globalized economic system, which, again, efficiency at all costs, included going to places that were, formerly adversaries or even currently, even before this moment, not terrifically friendly. But, hey, if the bottom line justifies it, why not make the move? And the whole offshoring and everything that we saw essentially in the aftermath of NAFTA, among other things, because NAFTA started the trend. Well, didn't exactly start it, but started the modern trend anyway. And then it continued from there because companies that went into Mexico or even further south found themselves saying, maybe this isn't the best bang for the buck we can get, and even moving all other places. China, of course, is a major focus, but Russia, as you mentioned there too, more than a little bit movement there if they could make the economics work for themselves here. So we're reaping the reward of that efficiency at all costs here. But then, of course, there are some that say, there's justification for immigration in general. The idea of particularly, for, jobs that people don't want to do here, the people that don't want to, go out and pick the apples in the fields. I understand that. But then when it goes way too far beyond that, the idea of to essentially that, and therefore everything should come here. The whole existential crisis that comes from what if our systems just literally cannot handle this? Because even from those that are saying no, immigration is a net good and should be opened up at any cost, even from them, I'm getting very frustrating lack of detail on, okay, but how do we manage that? Just kind of it ends up becoming invisible hand kind of reasoning, like, it'll sort itself out and we'll all be better for it in the long run. So even those that are, I mean, I don't really know their background motivations, but I think in good faith talking about this, don't really have a full grasp on the impact this is going to have as almost an existential crisis for how do we manage this, because in such a way to make sure that, among other things, the people we don't know of their intentions crossing the border here, that is always that question, as long as we don't have a security of it. But even beyond that, just what is, I mean, not even carrying capacity, but the ability to absorb this without essentially overwhelming. I mean, it gets way too complicated too fast. But yes, two very disparate systems that are then coming in direct collision among this issue and all the other situations we're dealing with here in this modern day.
Yeah, and I was on Beyond the Beltway a couple of weeks ago, and they had some experts, some NGO experts saying that, you know, that if you bring in a whole bunch of immigrants, it's going to be good for the economy in 20 years. Well, how about now?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have 20 years. Our economy is collapsing as we speak. We have to do. We just let it collapse, or we take corrections to make it to where it collapses slower. Or I don't see the other option myself. I don't see how in the world we don't allow. I mean, everything. I mean, I unfortunately, I'm very pessimistic. I don't think we have the wherewithal or the will to face what we're facing, and therefore it's going to collapse.
Let me put it this way here. I mean, I am generally, I consider myself a realist, but I tend to be optimistic on El Paso and the borderland region. But more specifically to your question then about the economy and how can this be handled, let me put it this way. As I was mentioning, jobs that, well, for the pay amount that is then afforded to them that, present Americans, let's put it that way, don't seem to want to do. There is a very much reliance in a whole lot of even still domestic industries on cheap labor, as cheap as possible, of which there's a whole lot of other and much better written economic theory than I have had here. But that amount of impetus, that requirement essentially for as cheap as possible labor, even below, if they can get away with it essentially by making it a quota system, essentially below even what is federal minimum wage, that might be the part that has to be looked at more specifically domestically. Because, I mean, you look at that even further beyond the, things will go up in prices if it's not done that way. But there's also an impetus from them to want to keep this kind of a, flow of cheaper human labor going. There are essentially industries that could be argued to be reliant on this form of immigration. And so domestically, maybe, again, this is a very small aspect of it, but I think larger than is truly understood could be seen as dealing with that, could deal with it further, and why there is maybe some that are like, no, it's totally fine because, they essentially rely on it. So I get your point more largely about maybe needing to look at how we deal with this economically. I think looking at that domestically, would go a long way to at least partially getting us to it. But, I mean, of course, it's a larger issue than we're even going to be able to get to within any particular show we do here.
We just don't have time. We have to do it. We have to start looking at it now.
Absolutely.
And if we don't, and it's going to be too late.
Well, I agree with you that we need to be looking at it here, and I hope that you're wrong on the second part, but only time will tell. And more people focusing on it, I think, will be an important part there. So thank you for the point in the call. You have a good one.
You too. You take care. Stay well, stay safe, and pray for the people in Ruidosa. They're still hurting, and although most of it's taken care of now.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. The McBride fire still festering, as it often does here. Was up in the New Mexico area myself this weekend. Wasn't anywhere near that, thankfully, but, hearts still go out to them. So, again, thank you for the point in the call. You have a good one there. All right, we got to take that next break right now. Coming out of the break, we got more calls on the line, and we'll get to even more and more comments here. Calvin Williams, Robbie Flores, Flaco Jimenez, John Brazelton, James Ratcliffe, RJ, Maria Coleman, and more tuning in, chiming in. We'll get to as much as we can here, cramming in a lot more in towards the end of the program here. We still got more time to go, so if you want to call in, again, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 Morning News Update. We are following developing news out of West El Paso of a rollover crash involving a pickup truck. Now, this happened on Mesa Hills behind the Target. Emergency dispatchers say the call came in at 2:44 this morning and nobody was taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, El Paso police are investigating a woman who tried to steal money from a cash register and fought with store staff. Now, this happened last Monday at the Dollar Tree on Alameda and Glenwood. Store staff say the woman tried to grab one of the cash registers. Police say as she tried to run out of this store employees tried to stop her and she punched one of them. The woman left without the cash register and was last seen walking towards Fox Plaza. Anyone with information is asked to call El Paso Police. As always, stay up to date with the latest news by signing up for our CBS4 newsletter. Just go to cbs4local.com, enter your email address, and you'll start receiving our daily news updates.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Joe Battle Boulevard northbound at Edgemere, a stalled vehicle is blocking the turnaround lane. El Paso Fire is on the scene of a crash. Copia Street westbound on-ramp to the 110. Gateway Boulevard northbound at McCombs, an accident reported there. Airway Boulevard at Viscount still causing a lot of slowing from that crash. And Loop 375 westbound at the 54 Patriot, accident there. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We are seeing our first 90-degree temperatures of the season this week, which means we've got a hot week that lies ahead of us. But that's not the only increase. We also have increasing winds. Every single day, we should see breezy to gusty winds. In fact, some of these wind gusts could bring some patchy blowing dust over the next few days until our main wind maker arrives at the end of the week.
This report is sponsored by Breakmasters.
Before your day is done, Breakmasters has already helped thousands of people get back to their families safely. Get your vehicle in Breakmasters shape. Download coupons at breakmasters.com. Only then can you say your day is done.
Breakmasters. We give you an honest break.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Maybe you've had to put off a health appointment or two during the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you're 45 or older, there's one test you shouldn't put off any longer: regular screening for colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a leading cancer killer, but it can be prevented with regular screening starting at 45. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. It takes guts to put your health first. Ask your doctor about your options today. Visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more
As
information.
you drive through Texas, keep in mind that Don't Mess with Texas actually means don't litter. Keep Texas roads clean and beautiful by holding on to your litter until you can get to a trash can. Always keep a litter-free state of mind and don't mess with Texas. A message brought to you by TxDOT. This report is sponsored by the Texas Department of Transportation.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone?
Do flowers have best friends?
I don't know.
Hey, look. Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to tune in and chime in on the show here. Of course, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch are the social media pages. On air, online, and live streaming through the iHeartRadio app are the ways you can also just tune in. But we also got that phone line open now. Getting to at least a couple more here before we close out the program here. A lot of comments coming in as well. Calvin Williams, you letting us know that property taxes went up this year, but I haven't seen any improvements in El Paso. Putting it further in perspective here, that taxes went up about 2 weeks worth of gas per month here. Could be a lot depending on what level of gas you're talking about here. Hope you end up wishing everyone a happy Easter. Hoping everyone had a good one there. You as well. Robbie Flores chiming in. John Browson talking about a story about, well, getting to some of his family in the country when they were emigrating here previously. James Radcliffe as well, RJ, Flaco Jimenez, Maria Kalman, and more. And there's a lot of conversation going on over there. RJ also saying Title 42 needs to stay in place, which in my mind is so pathetic that it's the big solution here. Yeah, that pretty well encapsulates it here, as you're often good at saying there. But let's get into more again. The calls here. Again, number to call 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We have Harry on the east side here with us right now. Harry, thanks for joining us.
Hey, good folks in El Paso. Good calls today. My motto is dare to be different, do nothing ordinary. I want to run a couple things by you.
Okay.
Andrew, it might be a little bit of a challenge for you.
Okay.
I'm sure you handle it. El Paso Electric had $142 million profit last year, and I would say that's pretty darn good for anybody that's in business to make a profit. And I could say, having been all over, our El Paso Electric is as good as it's going to get anywhere. Okay. That's my first comment. My second comment is a great show, a history show Saturday, and I know I'm probably out of bounds here, but the Sacred Heart Church, the folks you had on the air were very impressive. And I'm going to support that operation. And I hope that the rest of the folks in El Paso will consider keeping some restoration areas in El Paso that are probably older than time. Having said that, KVI 7, Stephanie Baez is on the board supporting that.
Right.
Where is your KFOX 14 support?
I do not speak for our news partners over at KFOX, but of course, I would love to see them involved in some of those efforts here. So I know that Stephanie Valle's involvement there, I think, is kind of personally based, but also, of course, the professional implications are hard to ignore there. So I'm not going to say I'm required of them because I don't have that ability to do so, but I would love to see them involved in this as well here. But anything, and I was very happy to talk with them this past week. And again, just because it is a relevant current event here, RestoreSacredHeartChurch.org is the website for people to visit in order to find out about their efforts here. There's also an article out in this weekend's El Paso Times, and also focused on by, well, the New York Times in this past week on Segundo Barrio and the current efforts of Sacred Heart Church here. So a lot of focus happening on that outlet here. So we're very happy to have them on to talk about, well, what's going on with the restoration efforts and the new research they had going on from the Vatican on that subject here this past weekend. So I enjoyed the show and was very happy to have on Father Rafael Garcia and Dr. Max Grossman on that point as well.
Yeah, exactly. We've got too far apart from our religious aspects, like you said, regardless of what it is. But we need to get back to that because we're in big trouble. You know, we are good at figuring out bad things after they happen, okay, and ignoring them as they are festering. And that's one of the reasons why the gun solution, the gun problem, will never be solved. It'll never be solved. And that's my comments for today.
I mean, yeah, hindsight is 2020. I always thought of as an admonishment, not a plan when I was growing up anyway, but it certainly seems to be we'll deal with it once it's a problem. And that's, well, I would say the federal solution, but beyond that, it's pretty much the everywhere solution. Wait until it's a problem and then we'll deal with it here. So I would love to see more proactiveness, but then you also got, well, in the modern day, we run into issues about, okay, what is the solution going to be? And so oftentimes it's only that the clarity and often, cross purposes come together once the problem has already happened, which is why, among other things, we're dealing with things like with the global economic order potentially collapsing in its own right or being split up as it might be coming out of this current conflict. Another way to talk about what our previous caller mentioned here. Probably no good solutions until after we've already been hit in the face by the impacts. That's kind of my expectations, though. I hope it won't be, but, well, past experience does inform the future realities.
Yeah, and be safe, El Paso. That's all I got.
No, definitely, and I can encourage that all the time here. So, well, appreciate it. Thank you very much for the point in the call. You have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. I mean, yeah, being safe, I mean, taking care of you and your own, that's been something we've talked about since the genesis of this program here, at least in the modern sense, in our daily format. Take care of you and yours because no one else is going to. And, I mean, that focus on that, make that your core purpose. And if you've got the ability to do more, to help out more, just to get involved more in other ways in our community, well, do what you can. But again, it always comes down to take care of you and yours because no one else is going to the way that you are in general. But again, hindsight 2020 applies there as well here. We got time for one more quick one before we hit that next break and close out the show here. Flaco Jimenez saying very thankfully that he made a small donation to the Restore Fund for Sacred Heart. Encourage everyone to do the same. Even a few dollars counts. I mean, very much involved there. I mean, and appreciate to talk about it. So again, restoresacredheartchurch.org for that particular one. I think local institutions are going to be increasingly important, whatever happens going forward here. But get time for one more quick one. We do have Raul in the Northeast on the line here with us. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Putin threatening the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine worries me a lot more than illegal immigrants coming into the country. And the death and destruction that Putin is raining on the Ukrainian people makes our problem seem minuscule in comparison. So I think Republicans want to talk about that because they don't want to talk about Trump's big buddy, the genius, Putin, who he had a bromance with for 4 years, chose to believe him rather than the nation's intelligence services community, and who, in the end, incites an insurrection in this country. This is the biggest thing that's happened in our recent history. What happened on January 6th? Not illegal immigration, but an attempted coup on the part of a failed former president. That worries me a whole lot more.
Okay, I think I get what you're saying here, but I can't help but then question that decision making because, like, sure, the fact that there was a Confederate flag being brought by someone who was not authorized, broke into the Capitol here, is concerning, but to say that that is of a scale larger than the immigration debate and issue, that just doesn't play out if you're looking at this objectively. Like, sure, we fully understand that you have your very specific points of focus and things that concern you here. But again, literally, we are talking about an incident that happened that is concerning that I want a full investigation into, and I'm not entirely convinced we will get out of this, well, this Congress anyway, until there is the next one elected, and even then the efforts will probably be quashed. But seriously, I mean, sure, the war in Ukraine and Putin, anything he does is concerning and its own level of threat, but like right here at home, right here in the borderland region, you're going to really tell me that immigration and border security are not issues? That just doesn't bear out objectively. Like, seriously, they're all issues. But to say that one trumps the other, that's just, that's too much whataboutism that I'm going to be able to handle here today. Because to say that, well, we don't have to worry about this, let's worry about this other issue, that's not what we do on this program. And it's never going to be what we do. This idea that, well, we only have to go to the biggest threat. At the very least, yeah, Putin doing what he does and the threats it has to this area is something that we have talked about, the impacts that we see here. But you're really, really going to stand there and tell me that it's going to be something more than immigration has an impact on this area? Sure, when bombs drop and we're worried about war happening in this area, we'll deal with that and we'll talk about that. And the advent of increased conflict in this world, in this modern era, is certainly concerning. It's something we have not shied away from, but then say, and therefore we shouldn't talk about these other issues. That just ain't going to fly here. So we're going to go ahead and take that next break right now. So thank you for the point in the call here, even if it's a bit out of order for this point during the week here, but we take on calls as we do. More of a Friday topic you're building up to there, but we'll get to those as we do and need to here. So we got to take that next break right now. Coming into the break, we will get to finishing out the show. You're telling what we got coming up for you this week and in future weeks, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned. whatever your circumstances are, whatever you're worried about in the world, something that I know that I can get myself taken care of and make sure that we, well, look as good as we need to when it comes to doing this program is by going to Gentleman's Republic, because they combine the arts of traditional barbering plus your favorite salon and even watering hole. You can find them online at gentsrepublic.com or by giving them a call at 915-532-3000. I got myself made up here. Got my next appointment already scheduled because, well, they can fill up. So you want to make sure to give them a call and schedule your next one. Again, their whole menu of services that they can provide for you, including hair and beard trimming, expert styling, plus all the services that you want to get from a great spa. Again, barber salon is what they call themselves because they combine all those great things. And really, who doesn't deserve to get treated like a king for a day? Plus, don't forget, they've got special packages ahead of prom season here. So for the little gentleman in your life, again, give them a call at 915-532-3000 or find them online. Again, gentsrepublic.com. That's gentsrepublic.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for crash slowing traffic. Copia Street westbound on-ramp to the 110. El Paso fire still on the scene there. Disabled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. I-10 eastbound at Executive Center Boulevard. Joe Battle northbound at Edgemere. That stalled vehicle is off to the right and the turnaround lane's back open. And a crash on Zaragoza between North Loop and Montana Avenue at Rosedale Drive. Use Penndale or Americas Avenue as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by General Dynamics Information Technology.
Are you ready for an unparalleled work experience where you see your impact every day? GDIT is hiring bilingual English-Spanish customer service representatives to deliver critical support to the government. $500 sign-on bonus available for select positions. Apply now at gdit.com/El Paso Jobs.
As the country bounces back from COVID and mask mandates are lifted, your business needs a lift too. Promote your company right here, right now. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV. In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? Visit iHeartAdvertising.com and get AM and FM working for you. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Help the planet with a tip from iHeartRadio Earth. Spending time outdoors can improve overall health and wellness. Celebrate Earth Day and take advantage of nature's health benefits by visiting a local park. Recreate responsibly to protect yourself and others and to make the outdoors safe and welcoming for people of all identities and abilities. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, I get real cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
I'll make $200 to $300 this year.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code FUN for 25 cents a gallon or more cash back on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code FUN to earn 25 cents a gallon or more on your first tank. That's code FUN.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day.
I don't watch television, so I get all my news from you.
News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk, rounding the bend on the last segment of the last hour of the, first show of the week here. Don't worry. We'll do this again 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday as we do here. And just tell you about some of the things we got coming up for you tomorrow. Going to have on that interview with the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. So stay tuned for that one here, talking about a visit that'll be doing in town the same day. So talking about some of the issues that'll be definitely on the ballot coming up here in November and even for these primaries. So Stay tuned for all of that, plus more on some, well, other extended border perspective on things like, these issues we're dealing with security, and really on, border security devices and also Title 42. I mean, all of this stuff, it's all wrapped up together, so we'll break it down as best we can. Plus, some future interviews with more of the candidates going to be on these primary ballots. So that's just some of the extended view we got for you here. I think we got time to squeeze in one more quick call. We do have Dave in the Far East here with us right now. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how you doing? Really quick, I just want to react to Raul's call about the whole, and I totally agree with you on the immigration.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the route to go because it's in plain sight. I think that's what our enemies there in Russia want, for us to just weaken ourselves. If you ignore immigration, that's how you sink a ship. How do you sink a ship? You ignore weight and balance, you overwhelm it, it sinks. And that's what these guys are kind of sitting back hoping will happen. So it's a foolish thought. And Raul has a good point. Yeah, Putin has his nukes and all that, but I don't think, and nukes will jeopardize the planet, and he has to live on the planet. So we're hoping that thought crosses his head. But immigration and our homeland is a huge issue. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely there. So appreciate it. Thank you for the point in the call. You have a good one there. That's about going to take us through the end of the program here today. I mean, we talk about the issues that affect us here in the borderland. That is our major focus. Yes, if nukes got dropped in the area, we're certainly going to be talking about that and hoping we never get there primarily. So don't worry. I'm always thinking about these conflicts here, but then to come at, I guess in more broad little sense, anytime someone says, no, you're not allowed to talk about that, just makes me want to talk about it more. Because of the idea that, no, this other thing you have to talk about instead, even in that way, that's the wrong way to go about me shifting my focus and priorities here, just to say here. But we're going to have to leave it there for today because we're out of the time for this program. So I want to thank everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. We've had a lot of different comments here, and we'll get to more of them as we can. Again, we'll talk more about the ways to leave us messages in future programs. But in the meantime, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Watch for crash-slowing traffic. Copia Street westbound on-ramp to the 110. El Paso fire still on the scene there. Disabled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. I-10 eastbound at Executive Center Boulevard. Joe Battle northbound at Edgemere. That stalled vehicle is off to the right, and the turnaround lane's back open. And a crash on Zaragoza between North Loop and Montana Avenue at Rosedale Drive. Use Penndale or Americas Avenue as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Join Brian Birds of the Brian Birds Home Selling Team every Sunday morning at 7:30 a.m. for Real Estate Tips with Brian, the best in El Paso when it comes to selling. Brian is an expert in real estate. Listen every Sunday from 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. on KTSM AM 690 for tips on buying or selling your home, info on what's going on in the market today, and much, much more. Real Estate Tips with Brian every Sunday morning at 7:30 on KTSM AM 690.
Freedom of speech lives here.
To me, freedom of speech is being able to say anything you want.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM.